determine its own means of governance, and choose the strategic alliances it wants to have. Every country's territorial integrity and sovereignty must be respected. These are the main principles, as the President of Switzerland has shown us, of international law and the post-World War II order. Mr. President, now on the first official day of the World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2022, we convene in Davos at the most consequential geopolitical and geo-economic moment in the past decades. Mr. President, we have all seen the leadership, your courageous leadership. We are eager to hear from you on what lies ahead for your country and its people, your vision for peace in Europe and the international global order, and how we can assist you, because everybody of us is affected by what's happening in your country. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Дуже дякую. Дуже дякую. Для мене сьогодні це велика честь.
It's a great honor for me.
Шановний пане голово,
Mr. Chairman,
професоре Шваб, шановний президенте Касіс, шановні пані та панове, шановні присутні. Я вдячний за цю можливість взяти участь.
The opportunity to take part in the discussions at the forum. The main theme for this year's Davos is history at a turning point, government policies and business strategies. This year, the words turning point appears to become more than just a rhetoric figure of speech. This is really the moment when it is decided whether brute force will rule the world. If so, the force is not interested in our thoughts, and there is no need for further meetings in Davos, as there would be no reason for that. Brute force seeks nothing but the subjugation of those it seeks to subdue, and it does not discuss, but kills at once. And Russia does that in Ukraine just as we speak today. By the way, look at the building of the former Russian house in Davos. It has been turned into a house of Russian war crimes. And this is an example of their transformation, that what Russia has done to itself by becoming a state of war criminals, and what it brings to the world. It inspires other potential aggressors to act. Instead of successful, peaceful cities, there's only black ruins. Instead of normal trade, sea full of mines and blocked ports in Ukraine. Instead of tourism, closed skies and thousands of Russian bombs and cruise missiles. This is what the world would like if that turning moment would not have a proper response from the humanity. It would resemble a large set of war crimes. So history remembers many moments when everything changed dramatically. For example, how several shots fired could kill millions of people. If those shots were fired on June 28, 1914 in Sarajevo, history remembers how much grief one person can do if it can see, it can understand that it's not being properly resisted, as it was, for example, in 1938 in Munich. Some historical twists and turns were noticeable, some not, but we always had to respond to them, trying to prepare for other historical upheavals so as to mitigate the possible consequences or trying to heal the wounds out of catastrophes that followed one or another historical twist. And now we have a large collection of such responses. There's UN Charter with all these agencies, the OSCE, the IAEA, the WTO, and many other institutions. But are there enough of them to respond to what we have faced today? But is it possible now to try to adapt those institutions for modern challenges? Definitely not. We need to change the approach, not to respond, but to act preventively. And not only to adapt to new realities, what we have, but to create new tools, new precedents. Look at what Ukraine has already done. We have established a historical precedent for courage. We didn't listen to those who said that our defense would not hold longer than just a couple of days. We have stopped the Russian army, which was called the second largest in the world, at the cost of heavy fighting, at the cost of thousands of lives. We are gradually pushing the occupiers out of our territories. But would we have to do that if we were hard last year and a full range of sanctions would be applied against Russia preventively that could knock down any aggressor? I'm sure the answer is no. Preventing war could be guaranteed should the sanctions of the world would be preventive and not just imposed as the response. Ukraine has set another precedent in the 3 months, a precedent for the unseen unity of the democratic world around the emotions of genuine admiration for Ukrainians' courage and around the understanding that you would need to fight for the freedom. And now hundreds of millions of citizens in democratic countries are putting pressure on governments and companies to make sure they would limit or restrain their relations with the aggressor state, with Russia, and instead to help the people who was under attack. But this is happening only now. Even though Russia started its war against Ukraine back in 2014, we are grateful for this support. But if that happened back then, immediately, that unity, that pressure on governments, on companies for the stake of the fight for the freedom, would Russia start this full-scale war? Would it bring all these losses upon Ukraine and upon the world? I'm sure that the answer to this question is also no. Now we see that the world listens and believes Ukraine, but there's also a certain expectations of the world as to how the situation will be resolved, what tools will work, what new can we create to prevent such aggressions in future, and how do we stop the brute force that has challenged everything that we all cherish and value. That's what the turning point means. Ladies and gentlemen, don't expect for the fatal shots being fired. Don't expect for Russia using their special weapons, either chemical, biological, and even more so nuclear. Do not give the aggressor the impression that the world would not resist enough. Protect the freedom and regular peaceful order in the world with the maximum efforts possible. This is what the sanctions should be. There should be maximum, so that Russia and every other potential aggressor who wants to wage a brutal war against its neighbor would clearly know the immediate consequences for their actions. And I believe there's still no such sanctions against Russia. And there should be. There should be Russian oil embargo. All the Russian banks should be blocked. No exceptions. There should be an abandonment of the Russian IT sector. There should not be any trade with Russia. This should be a precedent for sanctions pressure that will work convincingly for the decades to come. And would support the peace. It is necessary to set a precedent for the complete withdrawal of all foreign businesses from the Russian market, so that your brands would not be associated with war crimes, so that your offices, bills and goods were not used by the war criminals in their bloody interests. Values must matter, particularly when a full-scale war begins and the global markets are becoming destabilized, because someone there is simply neglecting the values. In that case, everyone suffers losses. We offer every company that leaves the Russian market to continue operating in Ukraine. You'll have access not only to our market of 40 million consumers, but also to the common market of Europe. And your brands, your positions, they will only increase because you would truly support the protection of freedom. Our representatives here in Davos can inform all of you on the details of the prospects that Ukraine opens for your businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, we offer the world to set a precedent for rebuilding the country after the war, which will show everyone who dreams of destroying the life of a neighbor that the war is not working. I invite you to take part in this rebuilding. The amount of work is enormous. We have more than $500 billion in losses. Tens of thousands of facilities were destroyed. We need to rebuild entire cities and industries. And we offer a special, historically significant model of rebuilding when each of the partner countries or partner cities or even partner companies will have the opportunity to take patronage over a particular region of Ukraine. It could be a city or community or even an industry. Britain, Denmark, the European Union and other leading international entities have already chosen a specific area for patronage in rebuilding. And thanks to this model of relations, the post-war rebuilding could be fast, could be efficient and could be of high quality. And this would not only allow to attract the best specialists, architects, engineers, builders, developers, managers, and others, but it will also be the largest in Europe since the World War II. It will become the largest opportunity for an economic way forward, and I hope that at the beginning of the international conference in Lugano that was mentioned by the President Kassis, it will be held in July this year, dedicated to the post-war reconstruction of Ukraine, all of our partner countries and most of the leading companies of the world will come up with their own packages of proposals. And taking this opportunity, I would like to extend words of gratitude to Switzerland for organizing this conference and supporting our efforts. I would like to note the efforts of Ursula von der Leyen, particularly her proposal to establish a platform for rebuilding and reconstruction that would be managed jointly by the European Commission and Ukraine and will allow to direct the European Union resources to restore the normal life in our country. But the list of the new precedents that we need would not be complete without a few more decisions. There has to be a precedent for punishing the aggressor and for the investments in the peaceful life. The Russian assets, which are scattered in different jurisdictions, must be found. There has to be seized or frozen, and then they should be allocated to a special fund that would be used to help all those affected by the war. Of course, this is not easy, but after that, there will be definitely no motivation of every aggressor to do what Russia has done and what it continues to do. If the aggressor loses everything, then it definitely deprives him of any motivation to start the war. Let's move on. Any response to the mass famine is too late. By its definition, the famine should be stopped only preventively, when it's not yet started. But now, the world simply has no tool like that, and we propose to establish the Organization for Responsible and Democratic States, exporters of food products who can act with respect for human rights and global trade rules. The motivation for us is very simple. Whatever the turning points they are in history, the humanity should have a tool to protect itself against the hunger, and Ukraine is ready to provide a platform for the activities of this new organization, which is definitely an important one. And one more aspect, this war of Russia against Ukraine convinces everyone that support to the country under attack is the more valuable the sooner it is provided. Weapons, funding, political support, and sanctions against Russia. If we would have received them by 100% of our needs at once, back in February, the result would be tens of thousands of lives saved. This is why Ukraine needs all the weapons that we ask, not just the ones that we've been provided. That is why Ukraine needs funding. That's at least $5 billion per month. And all the funds that we need for rebuilding our country. This is why we have established a fund for rebuilding Ukraine called United 24. And we call upon everyone to join this platform. For each and every donor, we will have a specific proposal how to help and where to allocate those funds, where are those priorities. The targeted nature of our work is the absolute priority. And then, under this brand, United 24, we propose to establish a global structure that can, within 24 hours, can provide sufficient support to any country that has suffered or faced a military attack, a natural disaster, or a pandemic. So we offer a new format for security guarantees based on what we have faced, what we have went through. And there must be something that sets a precedent for a timely assistance to everyone who needs it, to save lives, to save social stability, all the necessary elements for a normal economy. For example, something like a 911 service. There has to be similar service that is called United 24, which would guarantee the security on a global scale. Ladies and gentlemen, a man whose name is still well remembered, George Marshall, said the following back in 1947. He said, "Our policy is not against a country or a doctrine, but against hunger, poverty, despair, and chaos. Its goal is to revive a functioning economy in the world."
So that, of course, is the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy there addressing the World Economic Forum, again reiterating the demand that his nation is in urgent need for more funds and more weapons to, in fact, put up a greater resistance against the Russian onslaught. He also went on to state that this is a very difficult time for the people of Ukraine who are presently under attack. And the people of Ukraine, of course, expect the world to, of course, stand up for them in this time of need.